This Pokemon should not be in Legends ZA. Let me explain. Slowpoke has some fun lore tied to its evolution, Slowbro and Slowking, and it's all thanks to one Pokemon, Shellder. If we look at some of the Pokédex entries for Slowbro, we see in the Sword Pokédex, we see that Slowpoke became Slowbro when a Shellder bit onto its tail. Sweet flavors seeping from the tail make the Shellder feel as if its life is a dream. And in Shield, it says that being bitten by a Shellder shocked this Pokemon into standing on two legs. If the Shellder lets go, it seems Slowbro will turn back into a Slowpoke. And in Scarlet, when Slowpoke went hunting in the sea, its tail was bitten by a Shellder. That made it evolve into Slowbro. And looking at one of Slowking's entries in Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl, it says being bitten by a Shellder gave it the intelligence comparable to that of internationally recognized scientists. Come on, just bite his tail. Come on, I just want to see the evolution happen in person. Oh, what's wrong? You shy? Yeah? Oh, how about I turn around? Okay, let me turn around. Ah, oh, come on. When we look to other regions, we see this lore in action across multiple of them. Spoiler alert, it's not very consistent. In the Kanto region, Shellder is very common, and in the older games, Slowpoke and Slowbro could both be found in places like Route 23, Cerulean Cave, Cape Brink, and the Cinnabar Islands and Seafoam Islands. However, in the latest version of Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, they've been restricted to just the Seafoam Islands where Shellder also live, keeping it very closely tied in with the lore. However, Johto doesn't follow the lore very well at all. Shellder is very common, but Slowpoke and Slowbro can be found only in Slowpoke Well, and Shellder live nowhere near that. Hoenn doesn't help, as Shellder is completely unavailable, and originally so was Slowpoke, but in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, Slowpoke can be obtained in a Mirage Cave, but still we get no Shellder. So you could evolve a Slowpoke in the Hoenn region where Shellder doesn't exist. In Sinnoh, Shellder can be found on Route 205, the Valley Windworks, and Fugo Ironworks. In Diamond and Pearl, Slowpoke could also be found in Route 205 along with Shellder, which is great, and in Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, they're also both found in multiple biomes of the Grand Underground. However, as a side note, it is interesting that neither of them were available in Legends Arceus, which kind of implies that they're both introduced species to the Sinnoh region. When we get to Unova, it also isn't very consistent with the lore. Shellder is available on Route 13 and in Undella Town and Undella Bay. However, Slowpoke, Slowbro, and Slowking are all available at the Abundant Shrine, but there's an entire mountain that separates them from the nearest Shellder. In Kalos, it also doesn't follow the lore very well. Shellder's only available in Pokemon Y on Route 8. In X and Y, Slowpoke live in Route 12 and Azure Bay, nowhere near Shellder. And in our topic for today, in Legends ZA, Wild Zone 10 has Slowpoke, and Wild Zone 11 has Slowpoke and Slowbro despite there being no Shellder in the entire city, and Lumio City is a long way from the Route 8 coastline. When we go to Alola, we can get Shellder at Kala'e Bay. Slowpoke does exist in routes 1, 15 and 16 without Shellder, but they do live alongside the Shellder in Kala'e Bay. Then we move to the Galar region where Shellder is very, very common, but Slowpoke's completely unavailable. Whereas Galarian Slowpoke can be found in the Fields of Honor, but Shellder only exists in raid dens aside Slowpoke at times there, so it's a little iffy on that one. And then in Paldea, we're finally back on track, with Shellder taking up the north, south, east, and west seas. And Slowpoke are found in South Area 5, East Area 2, and West Area 2, which all bump up against the ocean, so they have both Slowpoke and Shellder in contact. And Casseroya Lake has both Slowpoke and Slowbro, and also Cloyster, as they bump up against the ocean as well. I thought lakes were freshwater and landlocked. Has the definition of a lake changed in the last few years? Oh, yes, we have a shiny. Oh, that's a gorgeous color. Hey, bud. Look at your gorgeous smile. Ah, you're so cute. Let's put you in a heel ball, I think. I'm gonna call you a Bubbles. Yeah. You are Bubbles. Hey, Bubbles. So overall, Game Freak has been pretty good about following the law loosely. There's only a few regions that haven't followed this very well. Though, if you forgive Johto, Unova, Kalos, and Galar, as they technically do have both Pokemon in the region, then only Hoenn isn't following the law. So more often than not, Slowpoke and Shelder do exist in the same regions, but this becomes a problem in Legends EA. Is it a simple oversight, or did they just need an excuse to include Mega Slowbro and didn't want to think anymore on it? Bubbles, do you have any ideas, buddy? No? Maybe I should have evolved you into Slow King before I asked you these questions. Wild Zone 11 has a static Alpha Slowbro. This Pokemon should be incapable of naturally evolving from a Slowpoke, as Shelter just doesn't exist except for on the far side of the region. Now, I have no issue with Slowpoke living in areas of a region where Shelter don't live, but I do have a problem with Slowpoke having already evolved or being able to evolve at all when there are no Shelter in the region to evolve with. This would have been a prime opportunity for Game Freak to have done one of two things that I think could have fixed this whole situation moving forward and made Slowpoke more fun to evolve. Firstly, they could have looked at some other Pokemon in these biomes to create a new evolution. In Legends EA, Slowpoke can be found in two areas, as we mentioned. In Wild Zone 10, we have Carvanha as the biting predator, and then if we go over to Wild Zone 11, we have Clauncher instead. Imagine if we got a Slowpoke evolution from either a Carvanha or a Clauncher biting onto the tail of the Slowpoke. This could have been a fun way to expand on Slowpoke's lore by introducing new Pokemon in this bizarre evolution. Secondly, and I consider this the best fix, as I assume Game Freak would want to keep the evolution lore purely to Shelder. Game Freak could have just changed Slowpoke's evolution entirely, changing it from level up to location based. Regardless if the Slowpoke was Cantonian or Galarian form, Slowpoke could be required to level up to 37 or higher, but only evolve well in the area where Shelder live. A Slowpoke would then evolve into Slowbro, or if it's holding the King's Rock as well, it would evolve into Slowking. This would work for both Cantonian and Galarian forms without the need for extra evolution items. All of that being said, I think Game Freak should just be more consistent with their lore. These fun lore tidbits about Pokemon are one of the big factors that make me love them, but I want to see that in action more in the games. In the future, I hope some sort of lore consistency is brought forward. I particularly like the idea of the location-based evolution methods. I'd love to catch a Slowpoke and just have to adventure to a completely different part of the region just to be able to level up and evolve my Pokemon. It'd be a great reason to go adventuring. Or they could just add Shelter to the game.